I knew exactly what I didn't want to do. Like, just because I can do it doesn't mean that that's what I should be doing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Answer the Call podcast with The Called Career. Today, it's Audrey speaking because I am doing a very exciting client interview with Christin, who we've been working with for about the past 6 months. So I have her on the podcast. She's going to talk about her story. So many good nuggets in here, so many good things to pay attention to. So I pray that it reaches whoever it needs to reach and that you listener out there find something to hold on to, because Christin's got a really inspiring story. But I'm going to let her intro herself, just say hey, and then also, Christin, if you could share what you were doing for a job and what you're doing for a job now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Christin. I was a planning and logistics engineer, and now I will be a senior lean transformation industrial engineer. So
Yeah. Yeah. And for our people out there who hear engineer and kind of put it all into the same category, can you kind of differentiate what those two things are for us?
yeah, absolutely. So planning and logistics is basically how do I get people or resources from point A to point B in the most optimized path. It involves a lot of coordination between multiple departments, and it takes a lot of time and communication.
Mhm.
Whereas lean transformation engineering is more of like process improvement. How do I manufacture something in a way that is efficient and safe? If you're doing something physically, you want to ensure if it's a repetitive task that that person has some like safety guards put into it, as well as it's not like so mind-meltingly boring that they're like, goodness gracious, I don't want to do this for the umpteenth time today. So
Mhm.
ensuring that that task is efficient, lean in the way that it's being produced, but not going to injure the person who's doing the tasks.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. And every time you talk about your job, I'm like, you are such an expert. Such an expert in your craft. So what the main point of this question is like what brought you to career coaching in the first place? Because I know you actually have a fun journey of kind of coming to the called career, having talked to us before you were ready to sign up for the full program. So what, I guess my twofold question, what drove you to come to the called career in the
Mm,
first place? And then what drove you to actually sign up for the full program about a year later, right?
yeah, about a year later.
Mhm.
So I actually found out about y'all through a friend who's a
Yeah.
friend of Kelsey, and
Yeah.
she was like, "Hey, you should check him out." Because I was just telling my friend Hannah, I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my job. I love industrial engineering, but it feels like it's just so hard to find like pure industrial engineering. I don't know. Maybe I should just quit engineering altogether and become a baker.
Mhm.
And she was like, "You should talk to Kelsey, and kind of see what she. I mean, that's what she does for a living." So I did, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds really good, but I don't want to pay." And I don't know, like I kind of just got a job offer doing planning and logistics, which is pretty close to like pure industrial engineering. I think I could just let's just see how it goes, and I'll commit. And if it's horrible, I'll come back. And it wasn't horrible. It was like not the right place for me, and like part of like when
Mhm.
I guess we'll get later into it talking about like the whole like different phases of the cold career and how that works. Like once
Mhm.
I got into phase one of like going through I guess I'll call it pre-work before finding a job, I was like,
Mhm.
I definitely would have benefited from doing this a year ago and not taking that job.
Wow.
I would have figured out like, hey, like just because I can do it doesn't mean that that's what I should be doing, because it's not my passion. It doesn't give me energy, and like I am just so drained at the end of the day. Like I would have benefited so much if I had known that probably like a year and a half before I actually
Wow.
so yeah.
Yeah, there's so much wisdom in what you just said. Just because I can do it doesn't mean that I should do it. And I'm glad you went on that journey to figure that out.
Hmm.
I don't want to say the hard way, just the like practical way, right? The hands-on way.
Totally the hard way, because it definitely like led to burnout,
Yeah.
exhausted all the time, didn't have energy, and it was is definitely part of the Lord's plan for me to like focus in on Him and truly like lean on Him for my next step. Because like what I want from my job forever is to make sure that like I'm reflecting the light of Christ and I'm like loving on my coworkers in not a like super overbearing way, but also in a way that's like, hey, like this is a different path than what you see. Um, like ask me about it.
Yeah.
Let me share with you. And so like I think that's going to like my last job, it was good. I definitely was able to do that. But I think like taking a job under like the Lord's guidance will be
Mhm.
better than like
Yeah.
what I could have anticipated and worked on and did in my last job.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're gonna get into that. One more question I have before we do is, was there anything in that when you took that job and you were in that job for a year, the new one, you were learning planning and logistics might be closer to what I want. It doesn't end up actually being exactly what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any specific examples of what, you know, was good but maybe not great? Like, what did you like about the job, but you were ready to find a new one?
Yeah, I think what I liked about the job was my teammates. They were amazing. Loved them.
Mhm.
Um, it was just fantastic working with them. Everybody was super flexible, open to trying new things, which is like perfect and idealistic when it comes to like, hey, let me just change how you're completely doing everything. Um,
Yeah.
it out really well. But I think what like kind of got me bogged down and like led to like the eventual burnout and me leaving was like there was just never a good way to like actually implement a solution that was long term effective. And it just felt like there was a series of short, quick fixes, and there
Hmm.
wasn't ever a let me put into place like a long term permanent solution. And that for me just kind of like wore me down day after day, knowing like, I know that there's a better solution. In fact, I have a plan for it, but I can't, for a multitude of reasons, enact it. And that just was like, I know I want to work with something where I can plan for like long term fixes and have like,
Mhm.
like this is a 6 month, 2 year. Here's like all of the milestones we need to hit to ensure like everybody is working at their best ability.
Mhm. Yeah, you were stuck in kind of a band-aid situation rather than a, or maybe even just a transactional situation rather than a transformational
Yeah.
situation.
Yes.
And yeah, and it sounded like just in that quick rundown, you had a supportive environment in the way that you had teammates that were really supportive, but it wasn't a supportive environment for having the kind of impact that you
Mm,
wanted to have.
yes.
Yeah, so it was, I think sometimes we make these statements of like, oh, I want a really supportive environment. It's like that's a broad statement that can mean two different things. And
Mhm.
that clarification was something that came to light after you took this job and you were in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had no idea till then that those were like distinctly different. Definitely
Yeah,
rolled them into one in my head. So,
totally. It's so easy to do. And that's what I would encourage anybody who's listening. If you're thinking through your own career and you're making a list of wants and desires, like break it down as granular as you can get
mm,
and as specific as you can get, because you could be looking for an environment where you can grow, and that can get you into a bunch of different situations, and it might not be something good. But we can go on and on and on about that. I'm going to stick to your journey, and so we start working together,
mhm.
and we're going through the clarity process. And I had so much fun going through the clarity process with you because we were talking about engineering, and then you alluded to earlier we're talking about baking, and like, okay, cool. So I always love when we have kind of two extremes going on. So just to tell me about, maybe you can start with the initial pre-work that you were doing. Did
Mhm.
anything really come to light during that, or any calls later on that particularly stuck out to you?
I think the first thing that like just stuck out to me the most was the like releasing your fear step.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that that was like something that I was like really holding on to until I was like going through that podcast and I was like, oh my goodness, that is me. And I felt so convicted that like as soon as it ended, like I had like set aside like 45 minutes to go through the podcast and then I was like, I'm gonna move on to my other things that I got going on. And I just threw like the rest of my schedule out for the year. I'm gonna focus in on this because I think I have like a lot of other fears that are feeding into like why I'm still in this role and why I haven't even like taken any steps towards looking elsewhere. That was just like, whoa. I like called my husband, was like, hey, like I'm gonna send you this podcast and I want you to listen
Mhm.
to it because it took my breath away, and I think it's like something like a lot of us could like just benefit from listening to. And then my second thing was just like writing out like I think one of the tasks was to go through, write out a table of like, okay, if this happens, like what's the worst case? How long would that take? Like what's the best case? And like I realized kind of just tying that back in with fear, like I did not look at my life like that at all. I was just like, here's the worst case. Let me spiral into my like anxiety mode and call it good.
Yeah.
That just like forced me to take a step back and say, okay, what am I actually anxious about? Is it something that's like actually worthy of being anxious? Side note, no, nothing is. But like, can
Yeah.
I devote less energy to that anxiety? Or better yet, can I just completely let it go? Can I say, like, Lord, this is yours? You take that anxiety because it's not really anxiety. It's just like the devil just trying to gnaw at, my peace. And how do I just take that away? And so I think those two things were big game changers for me.
Yeah. Ooh, it's gonna make me cry because I remember going through that with you and or just seeing you through that process and how much like the word anxiety would come up. It's like, well, this is just like kind of how my brain
Yeah.
goes. And it's okay to recognize that, but then also to recognize what agency we do have in choosing that. I heard something today actually on a podcast, which I've heard before, but I kind of heard it in a new context of like choose your hard. Like everything's gonna be hard. And
Mm-hmm.
if we're talking about anxious thinking, I'm not talking about anxiety, capital A. I'm talking more just like falling into anxious thinking
Mm-hmm.
of okay, anxious thinking is going to really cause me to fall into inner turmoil, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. Having agency in that and combating it ahead of time, that's also hard.
Yeah.
Both things are hard.
Mm,
We got to choose our heart though. Which one are we going to choose?
definitely.
And yeah, I think you did such a good job of that with the fears and just
I try.
then also, yeah, also opening up new ideas. So talk a little bit about through the informational interview process, you were had engineering as a focus, process
Mm-hmm.
improvement specifically, and then also baking
Mm-hmm.
and having your own business or doing some sort of like collaborating with content creators in some way. Talk about what it was like to pursue two completely different ideas.
Yeah. At first I was like, I'm just a smidge crazy for these are like two left field options. I don't know why, but this is where I'm at. And it was good though, because like some of the people I talked to were like bakers on the side, and their main
Mhm.
were like engineering. So it's totally doable to do like a day job that's like very type A, let's follow logic, and then go do like on the weekend something that's type B personality, and you're like, let me just be so creative. It's totally possible. But I realized like while I was talking to these people, I was like, I really just enjoy baking for myself and my family. And I love creating them something that they've asked for where I'm like, I don't have pressure. And I think that was like the biggest distinction between like process improvement and baking for me. It was like every time I talked to a different baker or content creator, they were like, yeah, there's like pressure in having to do this because you're delivering it to somebody. There is a customer that they're paying to look at your results and critique it for you. And depending on that critique determines your business's success. And for me, I was just like, oh, I just do this because it's fun and it makes me happy. And I love somebody being like, oh, that was really yummy. Are you going to make it for fill in XYZ like holiday or event again? And I don't think I really wanted that pressure. I was like, I feel like engineering has a good fair amount of pressure in like
Yeah.
for making sure it's like safe for people. Like you have OSHA you have to follow. And I'm like, I just don't want that in my day to day. But,
Mhm.
like outside of like a something I love. But whereas like engineering, I was like, yeah, like I know all of the rules. I know OSHA, I have all the ISOs down and like I don't know, like something about having those constraints for whatever reason didn't sound as strenuous and as heavy to me as it did for baking. Probably because like my whole sole income didn't depend on it as well. But
Mhm.
it was like, I know what the rules are. They're not going to change. Somebody's opinion may change, but like at the end of the day, just talking to other like industrial or process improvement engineers, they were like, the process is the process. Like it's defined, it's laid out, and you know what parameters you have to work in and what you can and can't do. Whereas like baking was just a little too broad for me in that way because it was just like somebody's definition of it being good could vary widely. And I was like, I bake for my family. They can be like, it was horrible, Kristen, but I loved it, you know? And
Yeah.
in engineering, they'll be like, yeah, that's a horrible idea. We're not going to do that. Come up with a new one. And it just, I don't know, it felt less personal, I guess, to have that rejection.
Mm. Totally. That is the definition of a professional passion and a personal passion and figuring out the two. And how did you feel in your decision to pursue stick with engineering, just changing it up a little bit? How did you feel in that decision knowing that you had seen through this other idea?
I felt so much peace about it. At first I was like, I'm gonna be so anxious. I'm just gonna be like, did I really do it right? Did I? Because I had so much second guessing and so much doubt in me because like I thought by taking like that process improvement engineering role that was like gonna be my bread and butter. And then when it like led to burnout because my role before then was definitely not for me, and it was like a process improvement manager, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing in my life. Like I thought I liked industrial engineering. And then making that decision, like going through all the interviews, while they were a bit laborious, they were like a good labor. It was like,
Mhm.
like when you reap your fruit, you're like, oh, okay, I understand now, like looking back, why I like spent so much time like coming up with those questions and like asking about really nitpicky things regarding how somebody does something in their day to day. So I was just like, okay, I've settled, and like in my heart, I know that this is the right thing for me. Like, I know, like, process improvement is in this very specific, like, lean operations is where I need to be. Like,
Mhm.
that is my home. And I remember like I took a great night's rest. I was like, love it when you have one of those like super deep
Yeah.
sleeps. I was like, yes, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the informational interview process that you were just talking through, which we consistent feedback that we get is that informational interview process. While it might be painful for people to get started, I do everything that I can to not make it painful. Um, by the end of it, like that is the thing that draws in that last piece of clarity. It's the practical element that we need because if we were to solely rely on the spiritual, then we're just waiting for God to tell us in the booming voice. And is I'm so grateful this happened to people out there, but we're not operating under the assumption that it's going to happen like that. So, got to plug in that practical as well. So, after that, you feel good about this decision. I remember too when you made the decision, we're like, okay, time to go. And then what was really helpful, and I believe is helpful because that's part of the process. You can tell me if you thought it was helpful, but getting all of the thoughts and feeling and emotions of it, I don't want to say out of the way, but working through it so it's no longer in front of you. And now it's just practical. Now it's just let's land the job and let's do your resume, LinkedIn, boom, 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 land the job. Of course, it doesn't always come that simple, and we'll talk through that. But was that helpful for you to just then go into the practical?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that's something that's like quintessential to most engineers. You're like,
Yeah.
oh yay, emotion.
So true.
Um,
I come from a family of engineers, so I speak that very closely.
feelings, great.
Yeah.
Then you get into the like logical, rational side, and your brain's like, let's go. I've got a plan. I can do this. Like, let me just put this template, crank it out. totally had an Excel template going, like laid out, ready to go. For me, it was like, I can do this. I know this. I understand this. My bread and butter. I was like, let's pull the trigger on that. And that
Mm-hmm.
part felt so much faster to me than like, and easier than going through like all of that like thinky emotional stuff just because like it's not my natural state. So it was
Mm-hmm.
something that like I had to get uncomfortable in order to like reap the reward of like, hey, like that was uncomfortable, but it definitely yielded me something that I wasn't going to just like rationalize my way through and get to. So 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're spitting facts today, Kristen. Like, that is um so refreshing to hear, right? Because in this process, like Kelsey and I, we are in it with you, right? We are in the trenches with you going through it. So now it's awesome for me to be on the other side with you, looking back and reflecting on it with you. So when you're thinking through that time of applying and interviewing for the jobs, what was different this time around than maybe past job searches?
Easy, straight answer. I knew exactly what I didn't want to do. I
Good.
earlier and it like remained true while like I was looking at jobs. Just because I could do it and do it well doesn't mean I needed to apply for it and interview. Like I had a job offer come up to do like project management, something I'm good at, does not feed like my soul, doesn't feed my passions, leaves me drained and exhausted. But I'm really good at it because I'm type A and like ultra organized.
Yeah.
And so, like, it was a difficult decision because it was a good offer. And, like, I ended up interviewing because, like, I knew, like, the person. But it was still like, okay, I know that I could do this, but I know that everything else I've applied to is process, improvement. It's that lean transformation. It really focuses on, like, transforming something, be it short term, mid term, or long term. And I love that because I can see the process and I can see the outcomes. And project management doesn't always feel like that to me. Or even some of the other roles where I'm like, oh yeah, planning, could see it, but it didn't feel as tangible to me. So for me, I could just quickly be like, oh yeah, no, not involving what I'm wanting to do. And it was so easy just to like move past it. And like even when I was looking through like different things, whether it was on LinkedIn or Indeed, like if it didn't have my keywords, because I love efficiency. So I just
Mhm.
control F, like what says process improvement, what says continuous improvement, and what mentions lean or Six Sigma. If it mentioned those in the job description, then I was going to read it. If it didn't, nope, not worth my time. Complete skip.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. I remember you sharing that with another client on a group coaching call,
Mm-hmm.
and Kelsey and I were obsessed because that's exactly what the culture of the group coaching call is to share those tips and tricks that are so helpful because you're all the ones actually going through it. So, um, yeah, and that just brings up the biggest mistake I see people make. One of the biggest mistakes, when my first call with somebody, my consultation call, I can pick it up in a second when people are saying like, oh, I can do a lot of different things, so I've been applying to like multiple different jobs. No, that is a surefire way to
Mm.
waste your time. And having this direction and this focus that you had actually led to a pretty quick job search for
Oh
you.
yeah,
The offer to accepting offer, not so quick.
that was a journey.
That was the journey, and we were tested in that.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual job search into interviews,
Mm-hmm.
into receiving offers, actually, I looked at it.
Less than a month.
From less than a month. It was exactly 30 days
Mm-hmm.
from when you started, from when we finished your resume
Mm-hmm.
to when you received your first verbal offer. It was 30 days
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yep, it was
Yeah.
so fast. I was completely surprised. I remember like reaching out to somebody for like the company I work with now, and they were like, "Yeah, well, let's put you in an interview tomorrow. How does that sound?" And it was like, "Oh, okay." And then the next week, let's do your HR manager or your hiring manager one, and then okay, let's do your second round. Okay, great. Like we're gonna do some internal talking, and we'll get back to you, and then here's the offer. It's like I'm sorry, what? Like, we
Mhm.
only connected like a month ago, and it was great. I was like, all right, let's go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Amazing. Praise God for that. And it's also just such a testament to when you are clear, defined, focused, and confident in your abilities to do all the things that you are setting out to do in the job, that will come across
Mm,
in your interviews. You still have to work and prep and do all those things, but if you're kind of wishy-washy about what job you want, that's going to come across in the interview, and that's not an attractive quality in a candidate.
yeah, I think about like casting your net wide for a job versus like focusing in and like casting your net in like a specific area and with like intention. And I think that's
Mhm.
like what, you know, being part of like the called career helped me do, because I was definitely beforehand like, let me just like, I can do this, I can do that, like I'm good at this, but I don't love it, but I could do it. um and like that, it took forever, I feel like, to find a job. And then with just like narrowing it down, I was like, okay, I know what I'm looking for. I applied, I got an interview with one company, and then quickly after got an interview with another company. It was just like, whoa, so
Yeah.
much faster. So love.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. So, do you want to talk about the kind of like tug of war that became your season of offers?
Yeah. Okay, wow. So it was like all over the place. At the end of the day, there's three companies that had given me offers, and they were all in different industries, but doing somewhat similar things uh, for them. So, like, the main goal, the same. What it would specifically be working on would be different. And it was just such a whirlwind because like I got like the first offer, and it was like a little bit lower than what I had been interviewing for and what I had like been discussing. And it didn't feel like it was going to be a really good fit. And then I got my second offer, which is, to spoil the end, the one I took. But then that one was like, okay, but we need to ensure we have all these other like things on our end and the client's end, signed off and approved. But we really want to hire you. You're our number one candidate. And then I got this third offer, which blew all the other offers like way out of the water. But it came with lots of caveats. And so then I had to sit down and really decide. And being the engineer that I am, I'm like, let's do a pros and cons list.
Yeah, I love it.
It was like color coded and everything. And pretty quickly I was able to like roll out the first company. I was like, it's not quite the salary I was looking for. And secondarily, like I think the workload isn't gonna isn't going to just really sit well with like my life goals, my personal goals, because one of the things that I was absolutely determined about this time around was having work-life balance. Like burnout was something that I had experienced in like my last job, and I just didn't want to go back there again. And so I was like, you know what? I think that first job would definitely take me down a path to burnout. So I'm going to go ahead and say no. And then I had settled on that second company. And I think I was like so ready to tell them when they contacted me. And they're like, so we have an internal hire, and we want to honor that our internal hires have priority. And I respect it. I think it's a great thing when a company wants to grow their internal team and talent. But I was so like disheartened, and I was
Mhm.
like, Lord, why? Like, this third offer, it's so great, but it comes with so many strings, and I can't do it. And I was like, I'm gonna have to work myself up into this. And I just like found myself ready to concede on like everything that I had like learned, and just like throw it all out the window from phase one and that clarifying process. And I had to sit down and like take a breath and like, okay, let's not be anxious. Like, my prayer was going to be in like for 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, every day. I like called my parents, I called my Bible study, I called my friends, like everybody I could think of. I was on the prayer call. I was like, my prayer is very clear. Like, I want to take the job that the Lord has for me. I don't know what
Mhm.
that is. I know what I feel like that is because it makes me excited, but it's not happening. Like, that door has closed. They said they'd get back to me. Like, I'm just gonna wait until like I have like that clarity and that peace from the Lord because I know what it felt like when I decided to not do baking. So I know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just need to really rest and trust and have patience in the Lord. And that's just like so really hard for me to do sometimes. Mostly because like I tend to, and I feel like a lot of us do, we tend to like get bogged down, you know, like facing and like focusing even in on like everything that we do, like all the mundane stuff. Like, oh, did I take out the dry cleaning? Did I pull in the trash can? And instead we don't take all the time that we need and that we should be taking to look at and focus in on all the magnificent things that like God does and like how he's working in us, like what he's done, what he's doing, what he's gonna do, what he can do. Like I had to remind myself like I can ask the Lord for the right job for me. Like that's not crazy. And I can ask the Lord to show that to me. Like it's I'm not going to sit down, I'm not going to hear his booming voice. I know that, but I do know like he will give me peace over a decision. And if I don't have peace, then that's not the decision to take. And so I'm like, okay, I can do that. And it did. It definitely took a while because also having patience means like you have to look at like the bigger picture of like what God has planning, and that's hard. But it's like even harder to like wait for like that bigger picture to unfold and to like see God's work. Like it is so like nail biting, like oh, anxiety inducing for me. I'm like I need to wait on like what the Lord has for me. Like I'm just so impatient. Like can I have it right now? Can I just know right now? I need the answer, please. Right now. Now. Like that was just exactly like Lord, I would just literally sit down and be in my living room and I like Lord, I want to know right now. Like I pray that there is an email after I finish this prayer in my inbox that tells me what I need to do. And like that was just all coming out of like fear and anxiety and like that wasn't gonna get me anywhere. And I just had to take those moments and like take those prayers and be like, yeah, I'm so sorry, Lord. Like that wasn't like me leaning on you. That wasn't me trusting in the Holy Spirit and letting it guide me. Like that was me wanting to lean in to fear and to anxiety. And so I'd circle back to that phase one, like clarity step about fear and like, okay, let me pray. Like, Lord, I am fearful about not having a job. I'm fearful about not taking the right job. And I don't trust in you that what I decide is going to be right. I don't trust in you that like I am going to thrive. I don't trust in you that I'm going to know what to do. But I know that that is my weakness, Lord. Like I know that that is my fear. And I remember saying that like a prayer just like that all the time. Lord, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. Lord, I want to do what you want over and over and over again. I think anytime I had a free thought in my head, it was devoted towards, Lord, I don't know what to do. Lord, I want to do what you want me to do over and over again. But at the end of the day, like I had finally like let it go. I was like, all right, Lord, it's up to you. I'm gonna I'm just not I'm not gonna take the third offer. It's so good, but I'm not gonna do it. It doesn't give me peace no matter how much the money is. And I think I decided that and like within an hour, this company called me back and they were like, hey, so some great surprising news. That internal candidate, they've decided that this isn't the path they want to take. And since you're a number one candidate, we want to give you the offer. What do you say? And I was like, what? Like I didn't even tell the third company no yet, but I had finally made that like decision in my heart and I had told the Lord, I'm just not gonna take it. And and just like that, I was like, amazing. Okay, Lord, I see you. I
I
see,
see you.
I see what you're doing. And then yeah, I mean it's floated along just quite smoothly from there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh my
Long story,
gosh.
totally
It
a roller coaster. A roller.
it's so good. Kelsey and I were talking today on the group call actually about how pursuing a job, like, it is so holy for many reasons. We're called to work and blah, 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 whatever. Sorry, not blah, blah, blah. That's important stuff too. But the side part or the other part of that you might not pay attention to is the faith that it draws out of you.
Mm,
The reliance on faith that is involved in this entire process
mm,
is so testing and
absolutely.
hard.
Yeah.
And you can't really, there's not a lot of other places in your life that you get that.
Hmm.
So it's such a beautiful process to see people through. It's a hard process to see people through, but then we get stories like this, and I really want to highlight that very honest prayer that you were praying, like, Lord, I don't trust you.
Hmm.
And I mean, that was like speaking to me, and just the power of confession and being like, Lord, like this, because there's so often we get into prayer and we kind of say what we're supposed to say, right? Like, Lord, I trust you with this, and I know you're going to make it work, and you weave all things together for the good of you, your plan, and your people.
Hmm.
But you just got to be real with the Lord, because He knows what's really on your heart, and you're only fooling yourself by not being honest. So I really appreciate that tidbit of just that honest prayer, and what the faith that drew out of you, and how this all came from deciding between different offers and waiting for the right offer. Because I know there's people out there listening who are thinking, how do you have multiple offers and say no?
Yeah.
And I think you even went through that journey too. You're like, I'm supposed to say no? Like, they offered me a job, they put on all this effort, they believe in me, and
Yeah.
I'm supposed to say no?
I had huge internal conflict about that. I was like, they put in all this time and like energy, and I felt guilty. And I was like, I would be so upset if I was like the hiring manager and somebody told me no after I put all this work into it. And but then I like again took a step back because like there's a reason that the Lord has given me comfort in saying no. And I feel like at least like our culture right now doesn't have a lot of comfort on like telling something that's good no, because there's not the expectation that there is going to be better or even greater ahead. And so we're just willing to accept okay. And, the Lord doesn't promise us like okay. He's like, I am the supreme. I I created this world, in 7 days. Like I have this masterful plan, and my plan is not okay. Like nothing about how when he sent Jesus to save us was an okay plan that was just randomly
Mhm.
thrown together. Like no, it was an amazing, great plan full of just like incredible things that we couldn't even begin to like plan or think out on our own. And like if we say no to okay because we trust in the Lord, then we know like whenever he says say yes, that is going to be worth it. It's going to be greater than what you could imagine. And
Yeah.
I had to tell myself that I have to I have to say no here because the Lord has promised something better and greater, and that yes is coming later. And that's sometimes so hard because that goes back to that like waiting for that bigger picture to unfold. It's difficult because you're just so impatient. You're like, I want to know now.
Yeah.
Let me have it. Like
Yeah.
like going to Disney.
Yeah.
The Lord's
Seriously.
just not sometimes like that. He's like sometimes it's minutes, days, hours, months, years, and you just have to like you have to take that, have the patience for the journey.
Yeah. And then because of the waiting period that you had, you now have this story of faith to share. And an incredible, my prayer personally for my own life is like, in certain scenarios, like, God, reveal a story only you could have written.
Mm.
Because I love to make up narratives in my mind, and I love to come up with all the stories. And I pray that with clients too, it's like, okay, Lord, like, only a story only you could have written. You have one of those.
Yeah.
So, as we're wrapping up here, is there anything else, if you're talking to somebody maybe who's considering career coaching, or maybe someone who's feeling really stuck and doesn't know what to do next, or is just down about their job search,
Hmm.
what would you say to them, Christin?
I would say if you could do just start at that clarity section. Like I would recommend doing that. Like I low key just really want to get my husband in and be like, hey, I know you love what you're doing, but like just do it anyways. I think
Yeah.
it was so beneficial to have clarity, because I feel like
Mm.
so much of my life had just been, oh, I'm good at this. I like this. Let's go on. And I didn't take that intentional time to say, okay, Lord, you made me in this way. You gave me these skills and habits and ideas. How do I foster them to grow your kingdom? Like the intentionality that clarity section had of like, how do I foster that for the Lord? What career, what job would allow me to do that? That is, I just, it's priceless. Like it
Yeah.
was something I would recommend on repeat. I'd shout it from the rooftops. That was so valuable. Like whether you're an engineer, whether you're like an artist, like whatever you're doing, like making sure you know that your talents are something that point towards the Lord, and it's you're doing it in a way that like glorifies the Lord. Like I cannot completely convey to you how much I would recommend that to pretty much anybody and everybody. And if you've done
Yeah.
it recently, do it again.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, doing it all the time. Um, that is so helpful to hear because yeah, we with the clarity process, I always tell people you don't have to go through clarity and change your job. It could
Yeah.
just be confirmation of the job that you're in
Hmm.
and better intentionality, like you're talking about, and knowing it's like, oh, it's not just because all the pieces kind of fell together. I am here on purpose, for a purpose, with a purpose, and I am living that out.
Yeah.
That kind of, oh my gosh, that kind of clarity, the confidence that comes from that is unmatched.
It's
I see it with people all the time.
Yes. And I think that too was like so great going into interviews, because I knew like I have these skills. I know that the Lord has given me a mind for like lean transformation. I know that is my passion. And so it was great to walk into an interview and be like, here's what I can do. Here's why I know it. Here's like the proof that I have that shows that I can perform at that level. And it was wonderful to know that. And I wouldn't be able to go through an interview with that like level of confidence had I not gone through that clarity section, because I'd interviewed before plenty of times. uh, but that clarity section gave me a level of confidence. I was like, I got this.
Yes. No, Kelsey and I always talked about that. We're like, Christin is on another level out here. She's like, I did this interview. This is how it went. I know that I killed it. So I'm excited for the next one when they reach back out to me. Amazing. It was amazing. Again, as I've said before, I am honored to have seen you through that and to be on the other side of it and celebrating this win with you. I can't wait to hear about more updates in your career. And thank you for sharing your story. I really, like I said, I pray that it resonates. Honestly, I prayed that it resonated with one person. I really believe that will resonate with a lot of people. I think you had so much goodness to share and so much wisdom to share. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Loved it all. So it's great.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To get an even more meaningful head start into your calling, head to thecalledcareer.com, where my fellow career coach Audrey and I have created a whole suite of free resources and tools to help you get clear and get a job today. For those who are definitely ready to land a job or start a business in the next 6 to 12 months, we're here to help you biblically and practically discern your calling through coaching, reflection, and deep market research. Identify the job that's aligned with it, even if you currently have no idea what you want. Rebrand your resume and LinkedIn to translate your background to appeal to your future boss. P.S. We take this off your plate and do this for you. Also, we'll teach you how to land referrals and get attention from leadership through networking. Again, if that makes you nervous, we have these emails and LinkedIn messages literally written for you so you don't have to sweat. We're also here to give you unlimited interview practice so you're prepared to address every elephant in the room and knock selling yourself out of the park. Then we'll round out with helping you negotiate your salary so you land thousands more. Just so you know, recent clients have gotten $8,000 to $50,000 salary increases, even though they were totally non-traditional candidates. That's because we specialize in helping non-traditional career pivoters land jobs they're ecstatic to serve in. It takes work, but we're here to see you through until the end, when we're celebrating that day that you send me an email in all caps and you say, Kelsey, I got the job. Then you could be on the podcast. But I'll be here until then, keeping you accountable and encouraged by meeting with you literally until you land the job you want, even if that's up to 6 months from now within our program. Apply to join at thecalledcareer.com, and I'll see you next week here at Answer the Call. Bye for now.